The wind howled from the northern mountains, a mournful cry that promised only more snow and deeper cold. It clawed at the bearskin cloak wrapped tight around Corag, but the young Cimmerian paid it no mind. At 16 winters, he was already a man by the reckoning of his people, his shoulders broad, his muscles coiled and hard from a life spent in the unforgiving highlands. The cold was just another hardship, another test from the grim gods of his homeland. His hand, calloused and strong, rested on the hilt of his father's sword. It was a heavy Cimmerian blade, its dark, unadorned steel etched with faint, swirling runes that seemed to drink the pale winter light. The runes spoke of battles won and blood spilled, a legacy passed from father to son. The leather-wrapped grip felt like an extension of his own arm, a familiar weight that was both a comfort and a burden. Corag's grey eyes, as stormy as the Cimmerian sky, scanned the snow-laden pines. He was hunting, but not for deer or boar. His prey was far more dangerous. Raiders from the northern wastes, Picts by their crude markings, had descended on a nearby settlement, and the clan elders had sent him to track them, alone. It was his first true test as a warrior, a chance to prove the blood of his ancestors ran strong in his veins. He thought of the gods then, as he often did in the silence of the wilderness. Not with prayers or pleas, for Cimmerians did not pray. To call upon the gods was to draw their attention, and their attention was rarely a blessing. Chief among them was CROM, the grim lord who lived on his great mountain, observing the lives of men with a cold, indifferent eye. CROM did not answer prayers. He gave a man courage at birth, a strong will, and the strength to wield a sword. After that, you were on your own. To whine or beg for aid was the greatest weakness in CROM's sight. A man's fate was his own to forge, with his own sweat and his own blood. If you fell, you fell. If you conquered, the victory was yours alone. This was the harsh creed of Cimmeria, a truth as solid and unyielding as the mountains themselves. There were other, darker entities too. Lear and Mannanan, the sea gods, whose influence rarely reached these high, landlocked peaks, and the Badbi, the war goddess, with her crows and her thirst for slaughter. But it was CROM who dominated a Cimmerian's thoughts. He was the silent judge, the ultimate arbiter of strength. Every swing of the axe, every grueling march, every night spent shivering in the cold. It was all a testament to the will CROM had granted you. A twig snapped in the distance. Not the sound of a deer, but the clumsy tread of a booted foot. Corag froze, melting into the shadow of a great, snow-dusted boulder. He drew the runic sword from its sheath on his back. The sound was a low, hungry whisper of steel on leather. His breath plumed in the frigid air, then ceased. His focus narrowed, his senses sharpening to a razor's edge. 3 figures emerged from the dense pines, their silhouettes dark against the endless white. Picts. Their faces were smeared with blue woad, their bodies clad in mismatched furs and crude iron. They carried barbed spears and hide shields, their guttural language a harsh stain on the silence of the forest. They were laughing, confident in their numbers and their savagery, unaware that death was watching them from the shadows. Corag did not feel fear. Fear was a luxury, an indulgence that got men killed. Instead, a cold fire ignited in his belly, the battle rage that was the birthright of his people. This was the moment. CROM was watching. Would he be a boy, cowering behind a rock? Or would he be a warrior, a true son of Cimmeria? He waited until they passed his position, their backs exposed. Then he moved. Not with a wild cry, but with the silent speed of a hunting panther. He covered the 20 paces in a blur of motion, his boots making no sound on the packed snow. The rearmost Pict never knew what hit him. Corag's runic blade swung in a clean, powerful arc, cleaving through fur and bone. The man fell without a sound, his spear clattering on the frozen ground. Before the other 2 could fully turn, Corag was upon the second. The Pict raised his hide shield, a foolish, desperate gesture. The Cimmerian sword, forged in the fires of the high mountains, sheared through the shield as if it were parchment, biting deep into the warrior's shoulder and chest. He screamed, a choked, wet sound, and collapsed into the snow, his lifeblood staining it a brilliant crimson. The last Pict stood alone, his eyes wide with shock and terror, He was bigger than the others, his face a mask of brutal scars. He dropped his spear and drew a crude axe, letting out a roar that was part challenge, part fear. Korag met his charge head-on. There was no finesse here, no fancy swordplay. This was a Cimmerian duel. Axe met sword in a shower of sparks, the impact jarring both their arms. The Pict was strong, swinging his axe with wild, desperate power. Korag gave ground, parrying the furious blows, his own blade a blur of dark steel. He was testing his opponent, feeling his rhythm, his strength. The Pict overextended, swinging his axe in a wide, clumsy arc. It was the opening Korag had been waiting for. He sidestepped the blow, the head of the axe burying itself in a pine tree. In that split second, Korag lunged. He didn't aim for the chest or head. He drove the point of his sword up under the Pict's guard into the soft flesh of his belly. The big man gasped, his roar cut short. The axe fell from his nerveless fingers. He looked down at the Cimmerian blade buried in his gut, then up at the cold, grey eyes of the boy who had bested him. In Korag's face, he saw no triumph, no joy. Only the grim finality of the mountains themselves. Korag pulled his sword free and stepped back as the Pict fell to his knees, then pitched forward into the bloody snow. Silence returned to the forest, broken only by the sigh of the wind. 3 dead. He had done it. He stood over them, his chest heaving, the icy air burning his lungs. The battle fire slowly subsided, leaving a cold clarity. He looked at his sword. The ancient runes seemed to gleam faintly, their hunger sated for now. He had not disappointed the spirits of his ancestors. He had not disappointed his father. He wiped the blade clean on the cloak of the fallen Pict leader, the rough fabric scraping against the steel. There was no celebration, no prayer of thanks. CROM had given him the strength to fight, and he had used it. That was all. The outcome was his own. Korag sheathed his sword, the sound echoing the finality of the moment. His task was not yet done. These 3 were just scouts. The main war party was still out there. He adjusted his bearskin cloak, turned his face to the north, and continued his trek into the unforgiving heart of the Cimmerian winter. He walked alone, a young warrior under the cold, indifferent gaze of his god, his fate held firmly in his own hands. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to follow Korag's next adventures.